the challenges that we face on different levels. Again, my brother-in-law, we lived together in a big house, was the mayor of town. And he had to organize with the Israeli authorities. They looked for him because there were no military or anybody left. The mayor of town to organize for water and services for the town. So, but they were frightened to come during the day. They would come. We never know when they knock, at the middle of the night, at 1 o'clock, and always we were a little bit anxious about these meetings that I still remember very well. And once they demanded, and this is how we learn about one another, that my brother-in-law makes a meal for the two that were negotiating. So as Arabs, we made mansaf, which is, what Abraham offered to his guests. They kill the goat and they have the yogurt of the goat and the rice and the bread. But the laws of Deuteronomy came later when this was not allowed with kosher. So we disappointed the guests. They couldn't eat from it because they were kosher then. Anyway, but that was the beginning of getting to know people in different ways of life. Also, there was a change for our family. My husband was a pharmacist and a teacher of chemistry at the French schools. They couldn't get Americans after the 67. They were afraid to come and work here. So the Quakers were thinking of closing the schools because they couldn't and I was urging them that they can't close the school in the worst time when people trusted Quakers and needed them. So they kept saying, but who would take care of the schools, who would take, and I was really pushing my husband to accept the responsibility, because in '56, when all the Americans left during the Suez War, as a volunteer, he took care of the schools. It was voluntary, not a paid job, because there was nobody here. And as a Quaker, he was asked if he, take care of things until they came back. They went to Beirut and waited there until things calmed down. So our life was turned in many ways, and we moved to the French boys' school. I think you visited the place. And we lived there. We thought it will be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but it turned out to be 18 years. And that was quite a challenge. A challenge to run a school with students that were so angry with the occupation, feeling so oppressed, believing in the freedom of expression and worrying about their safety. And so we had, after the war, personally I would say, I had many spiritual struggles, not only how to deal and raise my kids, to grow, and I'm not trying to sound triumphalistic or Puritan. I saw how if you're angry with someone and full of hate, it kills us, not the other people. So it's not really being triumphalistic and saying we love the others. What it does to us, that's the most important thing. And it frees one when you don't have that hatred or anger to be able to understand the situation and to be liberated to work for peace. So this struggle became another struggle with the students. We worry about their safety. They are next to a police station. What do we do with them when they wanted to express their frustration or their anger? So that struggle brought me really seriously to deal with two things. the Quakers highlight so much that there is that of God in every person, or the indwelling divinity in all people, no matter what their faith is, no matter who they are, nationality, race, sex, whatever. There is the Spirit of God, or that of God in every person. So this became a challenge to me. Okay, when you treat people well, if there is that of God in them, why that of God does not react? I mean, you start questioning. And if you see, the light also, the light enlightens you to see the darkness also in the world. So it's not, the light without the darkness. They go together. The light opens your eyes when you're enlightened to see the darkness, the oppression, the violence, and what can we do about that. So with the peace testimony, again, it's the other thing. What is peace? And what is the peace testimony? For many people, it wasn't a challenge because we lived, we didn't have to, fight. We didn't have to go to have our husbands or brothers or so on serve in the army. So, we thought we're safe. In that sense, we don't have to worry about the peace testimony. But it was much more than that. It was really to see what we can do. And it has three ways, the peace testimony is to refuse to take part in any violence and acts of war ourselves, to look for the roots or the root causes of war and violence, and to try to do whatever we can to transform our societies from these structures and these. So it was no more just not going to war or not hitting somebody, or in school they thought just hitting a child, that's violence, or so on. And non-violence became, and then I developed a program for ethics and started teaching that out of need. What is violence? When we hate, we're violent. When we, use bad names for people, we are violent. When we are using, when we have structures of violence that we support, we are being violent, and so on. So it became much more. And I found the two things very related. That of God in every person and the peace testimony. Why? Because that was after long years of struggle and testing, and when I found an answer for one, another question will come on. And what is the relationship between those? When I was faced with all these challenges, sometimes I felt tired and drained. But then I realized, whether I like it or not, I am a child of God like every other person in the world. That liberated me in a sense to feel the sense of equality, no matter what people tell me, as a woman, as a Palestinian, as this in patriarchal societies, as a lay person leading a church and so on. So I felt equal, but it didn't last for long, this kind of being empowered or privileged. So I realized this idea is very radical. And the minute I recognize the presence of God in my life, that I am a child of God, I have to recognize it in all other people in the world. So it empowers, but also it puts me in a position of great responsibility to see that of God in all people around me, and to work for protecting the dignity and human rights of all the people that are facing structures of domination. That in a violent way. Why? Because if we're all children of God, then we're not allowed to use violence against one another. What we should do is to join hands to transform the structures of violence, whether they're political, like the Israeli occupation, or lack of democracies, or in other countries and so on. It is the economic. We are really marginalized, and we are now just living on funds that come from outside, because, you know, we're still under occupation. Israel was relieved of the occupation, of paying for the civil services in the occupied territories, and still has the benefit of the occupation. They can come any night and detain whoever they want. They release one and they come to the West Bank and detain 10 or 15 the next day. And you hear it on the news. So, you know, this is how they bargain with us anyway. And so there is this political structure of violence, occupation, which affects our movement, our way of life, our basic human rights, all of them. Ask about anyone, and it does not exist for Palestinians. I cannot visit with family members in Jerusalem or in Israel, the Palestinians. That is a basic human right to develop family life. I cannot go for medical treatment. It's hectic to get a permit to go there. That's a basic human right for, I can go to meet with the organizations I belong to and to meet the groups that want me to meet with them and speak, you know, about my experience. So to go to work for some young people that work there. So it denies Jerusalem of the connection, and it denies us of connecting. And Jerusalem has been suffering a lot, and we're suffering too. First, because of 67, it became closed to all the Christians from the Middle East. They used to come at Easter and meet with families and live with them, and people waited for them, and they will exchange hospitality and goods and whatever. And especially in Jerusalem, they looked for that exchange of Arab Christians and learned from one another. Now, we don't have this flow of Arab Christianity from the Middle East. This is, so the people in Jerusalem, you go to the churches and also because of immigration, you find few Palestinians and the rest are internationals. And it's the same way with our meeting because of immigration and prostitution. So we talk, this is about how closure affected the Christians. After 93, with the closure of Jerusalem to Gaza and the West Bank, also Jerusalem is denied from the Christians that live in these territories. So this exchange also limited the Christians in Jerusalem and limited us from that kind of sense of community as a group. We are less than 1% in all the occupied territories, and in 67 we were 12.5%. So you see how the change has happened. I don't know if I should go on or I should give you more time to ask questions. Tell me what you wish and what, you know, I really would like to participate in a dialogue. I gave you a feed, and then I got, you know, involved ecumenically and internationally and with other faiths and so on, and in theology and in nonviolence and violence. So while this all came about to test my own faith I thought the inner journey is very related to the outward journey, and it is a continuous struggle. And I feel truth is no truth if it is not tested in one's own life. Like the peace testimony to me was, something written, fine, I accept it, but I did not try it in my own life before. So that's.
Is there any video on the internet that shows you telling your personal story of this?
No, I don't think so. There are other videos that people ask about certain things, what I think about the land or the chosen people, because I explain that theologically, and also about the Charter of Compassion. You see the video. I was one of 12 people that are from different faiths. We met in Geneva and with Karen Armstrong, and we tried to, and this is their Charter on Compassion in Arabic and in English there. And in the meeting house, we enlarged them, and they are in the meeting house, because this is about a spirituality that is inclusive. I mean, I speak most of the time about a spirituality that is for the protection of human rights, for protecting human dignity, and for peace and nonviolence. So, for me, compassion is one of the values that all faiths believe in. And if we had compassion, let's say, for other people, we won't have wars. If we have compassion for the environment, we would not pollute it the way we do. We will be good stewards of the environment. If we have compassion for people, we will not violate their basic human rights, or take their resources or their water and leave them without any. So for me, compassion has been a value that's very important.
You talk about your studies, your theology studies with other groups. Do you feel that in the scriptures, well, we'll just take the main three faiths recognized in this area, that you can find all of those elements of compassion that they have something in common to share? Or do the different groups have a different take?
All of them have compassion as a value, but the Bible is full, and the holy books are full of contradictions. Excuse me for saying that. I mean, and the problem comes when you take the Bible literally. When you take the Bible literally, it's confusing. Do you take the violence when you fight another nation? What do you do to them that you find in the Old Testament? Do you submit as people understand it in other areas? But compassion is a value that is mentioned in all the prayers in the three faiths. It's also in Buddhism and other issues. For instance, the Muslims start every prayer, every letter, in the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. So this is part of that faith. For Christians, this is very important. Compassion is what we were taught to have for our fellow human beings. So it's the same with the Jewish people. But it depends what people pick and what they want to use and what they highlight. That's another story. I think it's nowadays, if we want the Bible to be a source of inspiration, I don't think we can take it literally. Why? Because I feel the Bible has been written by people. This is their perceptions of the reality of God. That's fine, but God is still alive. and God is able to reveal God's self to people. It did not stop at the end of writing the Bible. So I think we should, reading the Bible, we should have ethical consciousness of what we accept according to ethical values nowadays. Do we accept war or peace, violence or non-violence, respect to humanity and human rights or abuse of human rights, respect to women or silencing women? So we have to have a modern critique of some of these verses that are not helpful, that have dark shadows on the Bible, and leave them aside. We cannot even reconstruct them when they say a woman should be silent in the presence of men. Sometimes men have to be silent too if they don't make sense.
I gotta go.
No, there are many men here. Don't worry. I said
Well,
both.
they can stay. I gotta go.
So, you know, it's just, there are certain things that in our societies we don't want the Bible to be used as a tool of oppression. And in our situation, I'm sorry to say, it has been another religious structure of domination and oppression for Palestinians. So although my faith, I struggled with my faith to be able to live up to the peace testimony and to compassion and respect for all, I was always challenged, and that's why I got involved with theology, not because I had nothing to do, but really, frankly, because I don't think God has chosen people and He is a real estate agent that gives some the land and others without the land. That's so I think God is the God of all, and the land is given by God, and we should be stewards. All people should be stewards of the land. So, you know, I don't like this kind of interpretation. Another question?
Can you tell us what you think of the direction of Israeli society, how challenge of trying to reach them in some way, or challenge them? Is there any thoughts on that?
I think some of them have been working with Palestinians, some peace groups, you know, those against that are working against house demolition of Palestinians. They're advocating that others that come and demonstrate with Palestinians that are against the wall. Some are working on covering up the violations of human rights in the Palestinian areas, in the occupied territories. And we have contact with those. But unfortunately, when we tell these friends, why don't you speak about these things in your own society? They say it's very difficult. Today I was watching the news and some videos about the situation of the African refugees that live in Tel Aviv. And I saw young women shouting at them that they should go home. We don't want you here. And everybody clapping and being happy because they were saying this, the young women, to the African immigrants. So it's a society that is really bleeding morally as far as racism, as far as, and they seem not to mind even public opinion. I mean, something is coming out about a Quaker woman who's from Ramallah originally, but she's an American citizen. They detained her at the airport, and she tried to get in touch with the American embassy. for no reason, because she works for peace and justice. And she's coming for the wedding of a cousin of hers in Ramallah. And they put her in a room, kept questioning her, and then they sent her back. Now, the point is, at Ben Gurion, the point is that when she asked the American embassy to help her, they asked her if she's Jewish. And when she said no, they said, we help only Jews. And this is becoming a scandal for the embassy. Now it's reported by many organizations and so on. So it shows you the biases of the American government, even towards their own citizens. And that has been disappointing, not only to her, to many other American citizens. And so now I find daily 4 or 5 emails from other Quakers that are publicizing this. So
I can write my congressman when I get home.
yes, so this is really something that's also bothering us.
You think your congressman will do anything about it?
One of them would, and 2 of them
No, he's already been bought, so it doesn't matter what you tell him.
Well, not, I mean, I have a friendship with him that makes me a sense of trust, openness to, and hope for. He's younger, he's not been in there for 30 years like the other 2. You know, but it's up to me to check that out. It's up to me to explore.
That's good. It's always good to try, even if we don't succeed. I knew a Catholic Irish priest, Kathy knows him too. He wrote many books. He died very young in an accident. His name is Father Michael Pryor from the Order of St. Vincent. And he wrote many books. One of them is The Bible and Colonialism, how the Bible has been used as a tool of colonialism in Latin America and South Africa and Palestine, and also, I mentioned South Africa as well, you know. So this, and then he wrote, after 50 years, the archives of Zionism were opened for scholars who were studying about Zionism. And he read and wrote a book about Zionism, which he showed that the really intent was to take the land and get us out of it. And that was not welcomed, of course, by the international Jewish community. So his last words before he died, 2 days before he died, on the phone, he was telling me, I was a speaker at Chicago, you know, he said, Jean, well done, he saw my paper. But I want you to know one thing nowadays. I said, what is it? He said, you have to use the politics of embarrassment. I said, what do you mean? He said, I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, if they ask you, what do the Japanese wear? Instead of saying kimonos or so on, say, Zionism is a crime against humanity. That was his last words to me when, you know, he congratulated me on the phone before he died. He was 61. Huh?
The priest's name?
Pryor. Father Michael Pryor, P-R-I-O-R. So, for instance, he did not leave a chance without, he worked in Bethlehem University, was going back and forth to the university, and he saw how they treated the Palestinians at checkpoints and in other places. So he will go and stick his neck out. That's why I said it's good to try to do what we can. And they asked him once not to interfere. I mean, these are a threat to security, these Palestinians, and they should check their papers and so on. And he kept telling them, shame on you, shame on you. Why do you come here to start with? They are in their own city and so on. So this is to expose the structures of violence and the principalities. This is what he was saying. The politics of embarrassment. I mean, when you're in dialogue, would you accept, as, let's say, an Israeli, to see that children's rights are being violated and they're in detention camps and they're not tried for nothing, you know? So these are some of the things also we could do to protect the suffering humanity here. You call it whatever you like. It can be, Paul said, expose the principalities and powers. He used that. This father is calling it the politics of embarrassment, which is similar in a way, exposing the powers and their ethical deterioration nowadays. Yes, please.
I read your book you wrote on violence, and I really enjoyed it so much. And in one of the opening chapters, you talk about your identity as Palestinian Christian,
Yes.
and how it's perceived or not perceived by other Christians. I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about the Palestinian Christian history and identity to our group, because we haven't really heard that sort of breakdown yet.
You have time for that, huh? I just wanted to check, not to over tire you or, you know, the Ramallah, my town, is originally a Christian town. Every single person that lived in Ramallah belonged to the Orthodox Church. It was the main church in Ramallah. So it's recognized as a Christian town. Then in 48, many also of the Christians that you know, were refugees from the coastal plains of Ramallah settled in Ramallah, and later they didn't stay in the camps, and our meeting house housed many of them, our houses under our pine trees and so on. So we had many refugees in Ramallah, but many later, now they are the spine of the Orthodox Church, these Christians from Ramallah and Lidda. So it's originally a Christian town. And in the 19th century, with the flow of Christian missionaries from the West, because they were interested in the Holy Land, they want, you know, a church for them, sorry, in the Holy Land. So many groups came here. Some succeeded in having churches and in starting churches. The Orthodox Church did not like that because they did not convert Muslims or Jews. In fact, there was a mission from England that came to work among Jews, and they were not allowed at all because there were Jews living in Palestine as well. And so they turned to the Christians. And I would say all the missionaries that came, they never succeeded in converting Muslims. What they did is rearrange us into different compartments. So no matter, now my cousin, his family became Lutheran, my mother became a Quaker, and my mother and my mother were all years together, you know. And so they're the same identity, the same. And the interesting thing, for the laity, they don't worry about theology. It's really the priests that worry about the theological differences. Even when your father died and the priest Julian was there to do the way things, the Lutheran way, your aunt in Churcheto wanted to do the Orthodox way, to put the, you know, going back to soil and put it there and to think these things for her brother. So, and we don't mind, we're very ecumenical as far as laity, we move. As a child, I remember, I thought the Quakers were boring. I used to attend at Easter all the prayers in the Catholic and in the Orthodox Church just to see what's going on. So, you know, we didn't have all these activities. And now my granddaughter, who's a Quaker, and, you know, it goes around to look what is going on. Sometimes she likes it, sometimes she finds it different. I mean, so we're not that strict in movement. Also, the Orthodox were very strict with their canon law that cousins could not marry. And all Ramallah people were cousins. They were really.
We were worse than West Virginia.
Yes. Seven, the grandfather and his 7 sons and their daughters. So if you make a tree of Ramallah, I was joking with my son, we will be third cousins. He said no more. So, you know, originally we're all Christians and we cross boundaries easy. But still, it also made us feel, you know, separated from one another. And also it made people misunderstand that the first church started in Jerusalem. So every time we really met some people coming from the States, if they will ask this question, or when we speak in the States, when did you become a Christian? When were you converted? And once, you know, as a young woman, I was maybe less patient. So I said, I am a Christian because my, you know, ancestors are disciples of Christ. The first church in Jerusalem. What do you mean? He thought I was joking. I said, no, that's true. And to make things easier for you, my grandfather is Musa. My father's name is Ibrahim. My brother's name, it's true, I wasn't making up. My brother is John, my cousin is David, my uncle is David, my other uncle is Jen, and the other is Isaac. My grandmother is Sarah. And he looked at me and he said, you know, he was really very disturbed. This is in Kansas. One evangelical friend was asking me that, and he thought, you know, he wants to see. So I looked at him, he was really confused. I said, sorry friend, I didn't give you the satisfaction that you have saved my soul. But, you know, this is really the thing. Frankly speaking, that's how, I mean, we learned a lot and we gained a lot from the work of missionaries in education, in hospitals, and so on. But there is one thing, all missionaries came during the colonial period. And they had with them, with all the good intentions, they had something to give, which is wonderful. But at the same time, it was give and receive, not coming to learn and be partners and share with one another. We might not have the physical resources like money, but you have resources and gifts in different ways. So I don't like that type of giving that was existing, you know, that donors, and I don't use the word donors, and those that receive. And it brings with it, you know, higher and lower, superiority and inferiority, which is a spirit that wasn't good. To get those funds, you have to bow down and accept everything, and if you question, you don't get it. And I feel the relation should be equal. We have all different gifts. We should put them at the altar so they will be purified and used for the well-being of the community. And I used to say, when we're busy with the gifts that we bring to other communities, sometimes our hands are full and we're not free to embrace the people and get to know them. So this is, they have done a lot, but you know, certain things Like now the occupation of Iraq, many of the assemblies of God and others are going on the heel of the occupation. And that's why the friction started between Christians and Muslims, because they really use, and people generalize, all Christians are the same. They don't know the differences like we don't know the differences between Muslims. So the terminology that was used in war was Christian terminology. Like Baghdad was lit like a Christmas tree with all the bombs that were falling on it. And the submarine of Condoleezza Rice was called Corpus Christi, the body of Christ. And this is a sin, really, against the Christian beliefs. So that's why then they turned to say that was a crusade. And the crusades, So these are some of the things that have affected people. Does this answer your question? But still, I have two answers. Are Catholic nuns, and one of them, she says, she likes me, she speaks French most of the time because she's St. Joseph Order. She says, I like your spiritual, the French word for spiritual, when she read my book. So, in spite of the differences, the spirit reconciles and unites.
Any message to send back to Americans?
I think Americans, like Israelis, have so much to do in their own societies. We're glad that you come, and we feel, really, we feel encouraged, very encouraged by your visits, because I feel we formed one global movement, and I don't feel as a Christian I am among the minority. I feel I am part of the Church Universal. So it's really strengthening to us. It helps us to see that you care and you want to know, and you take the expense and the physical fatigue and all of it to come not as, tourists, but as getting involved in the passion of Christ, where you hear the cries of the oppressed, the sick, the elderly, the captives, it's very important when you come and relate to other Christians, because this is what it means to get involved in the passion of Christ. But I think if the U.S. is a democracy, as you said, you can talk to your congressman. We don't know if it works, but we will.
I'll tell you.
Yes, I know. I'm just saying, we hope it works. But we have hope in civil societies. I'm not saying just in the United States. The churches and civil societies have been doing a lot, and we're encouraged by that. Even if it did not change our situation and our situation deteriorated, but they see that some churches are being interested to really discuss these problems, whether, they're moving, some of them slower than others. Also, civil society is moving. So there is so much that can be done on that level. Also, the aid that is given to Israel. I think, frankly speaking, you could make use of that money back home if you have Americans there or Canadians, I don't know your nationality. You can use it there, honestly, for your schools, for your health system, for everything. So, yes. Why? I mean, for the needs of the people. Third, I believe that America is not winning the world as a world power. by standing against democracy and justice in the world. They are very good friends with all the Arab dictators, and they are trying to mess in everything. I think they will be better off if they just try to see what's happening in the US and Europe. I would say also to some Quaker meetings are moving on to take sanctions or divestment. Some of them are divesting from funds that they, put in that are used in Israel and Caterpillar.
Yeah,
and
just got
so
that
on.
email.
Yes. So, there are many things that one can do. And if you're intimidated by others as being anti-Semitic, please don't worry about it. We're not anti-Semitic. The well-being and the liberation of the Jewish people is bound to our liberation. And I think it's bound to the liberation of the whole world. I mean, if there is a threat to peace anywhere, it's a threat to peace or justice everywhere. That's what, and we are not trying to say that we want to transfer power from one group to the other. We really want liberation and peace and respect for human rights for everybody. And so the Palestinians need to be liberated from the occupation, and the Israelis need to be liberated from the occupied territory. We're bleeding physically and they're bleeding morally, believe me. And this is suicidal. You have 5 minutes before if you have more questions. Was this the thing you really expected to hear, or you want other things? For instance, I dealt with theology just from my ethical way of looking at things. Many theologians take the Exodus as the paradigm of liberation. I refuse that. And when I started saying this, my friends in Harvard would say, Jean, now you will be attacked. I said, I don't care. As a Palestinian, if people tell me your liberation would be at the expense of somebody else, I don't want it. So for me, the Exodus paradigm is a paradigm full of violence. Some people are getting their liberation on the expense of all the people that lived in the land. This is not liberation. So for us, God is a God of compassion and mercy and justice, not a God of favorites. Also the issue of election. And we keep really reading this in churches and speaking of the Jews being the chosen people. They internalize that, and the way they act as if, they're beyond anybody questioning their actions. Sorry to say that, but, like a spoiled child that believes he's special to his parents and he can do anything. I think this is not right. Many people thought they were elected and abused their power. Take, patriarchs, take leaders of states. They think they were elected to serve, but what they do, they dominate and have power over others rather than power with others, or power from within, empower people to use the power within them. So for me, this election has been used in our world. Those that had the power abused it over other people and had authority over them. I don't like it. And the third one is the land issue. The land is given by this to this to that. I mean, that is also for me not acceptable. I said that earlier. I don't want to go on again.
You said Karen Armstrong had visited here recently?
I Karen Armstrong. She didn't visit here, but we were together in Switzerland.